Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Sorry that we're so crowded. I'm going to call this Board of Directors meeting for CROA for Tuesday, August 30th into session. Was the meeting properly noticed?
It was properly noticed.
And is there a quorum?
You do have quorum.
Great. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The meeting is now in order. I have a copy of an agenda here that I'm just seeing for the first time. But on the agenda, we've got owner comments. So unless there's an objection from anyone on the board, we'll go ahead and start with owner comments. If anyone would like to speak, come up to the podium. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. We'll take the people in the room first, and then we'll go online if anyone wants to speak. So is there anyone that wants to speak? Raise your hand and come on up.
Kathy Carlson, Bruce and I live at 1243 Aquila in Celebration. I would just like to make a request of the board to convene a committee. I would be glad to volunteer to be on the committee, and perhaps other realtors regarding property values and the issue of cutting shrubs to the height of a fence. So we've had some people with 4-foot wrought iron fences on corner lots, and they're looking for privacy. So I think it'd be nice to come up with not just everybody has to cut their shrubs to the exact height of their fence, because some people back in the beginning put in 4-foot wrought iron fences. Now everybody can see in their pool, and they put them up higher. So it needs to be more than just the fence being the common denominator of what should be cut down. So I would love to have a committee of whoever on the board wants to be as a liaison, and people that have to do that. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, what we're doing, we listen to your comments. We're not going to necessarily respond today, but we're taking notes, and management will also be aware of that. Anyone else in the room that wants to speak? Mr. Hanson?
Hello, it's David Hanson. We live at 1111 Tapestry. We used to have a map of the area that the realtors would use and so forth. We give those things out. It's updated. It needs to be updated, I'm sorry. And I understand that maybe the original template has been lost, but they can't make any more up. But it would be very helpful to have that redone. And I'll bet the realtors would contribute. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments from people in the room? Do we have any hands up?
There's one.
Okay. Go ahead.
Keith.
Mr. Thompson, go ahead. We can hear you. Hello. Is he muted?
He doesn't look muted on our end.
Keith, can you hear us? Hello? Keith, all we're hearing is static, so if you can sign back in and then raise your hand again, we'll invite you to speak, but we can't hear anything. Do we have anyone else?
That's the only hand up.
Okay. Oh, I still hear somebody. All right. With that, we will move to adoption of the agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Yay.
I'm going to go for a roll call vote. Motion to adopt the agenda. Jim?
Nay.
I'm going to ask that you put your microphones closer.
Sorry about that. No.
Okay. Celia?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
I'm going to abstain. The motion carries. The next item is the discussion items, and we have first the board organizational structure. Before I relinquish the gavel here, I want to first of all thank the board and staff. In the 6 months that we've been convened, we have accomplished a great deal. There are over 180 repair and maintenance projects that are underway or have been completed. There are inspections of homes that have been done for the first time in several years. There are new initiatives for communications. There are, for the first time that I can recall, a fully staffed town hall. And we have done a great deal. This board has worked as a board to approve those items. We've also undertaken some big projects like the consideration of Celebration Hall, like dealing with Lakeside and communications with our advisory groups. And I'm proud of those efforts as well. I am not the board, we are the board. And as a board, we have accomplished a tremendous amount in 6 months. It is clear that we have pushed hard and we have taken high velocity. We've asked staff to do a lot of work in a very short period of time, and they have done that. And along with our volunteers, particularly those in covenants and ARC, but every one of our committees, an enormous amount has been accomplished to this point in the year. And I want to thank all of those folks. I want to thank the people on the Finance Committee. I want to thank those in special events. I want to thank the Recreation Committee and all of the volunteers that go in all of those groups, technology and dog park. I'm probably missing someone, but I appreciate all that's been done. This has been a unique 6-month period. We have come out of COVID. We had a brand new management company in which virtually every member of staff was not only new to Grand Manners, but new to Celebration, and in many cases new to the ownership world, the HOA world. I particularly want to thank and congratulate Lauren for the job that she's done to this point in the year, and I think she's great. Having said all that, are there things that need to be improved? Absolutely. Do we need to be better at finding a collaborative stance on the work to be done? Absolutely. It is and has been the role of the president historically, and I see some former presidents of CROA and members of CROA in the audience today. Historically, the president has had a couple of requirements. One is to appoint a one voice, which is a voice of the board to speak to management on certain items. So when we talk about finance, Brian has been our one voice. When we've talked about condos and service areas, Celia has been our one voice. When we've talked about covenants, Cindy has been our one voice. The president's role is to be the one voice to management. That is required under our contract with Grand Manners. And that's to avoid the problem of 7 board members all independently trying to establish their own communications and agenda with management. And so in that role, the president has the obligation and the authority to speak for the board to management. But that is to be done only with the consent of the board. In the last 6 months, my goal has been to do just that. Unfortunately, there have been times when the speed of the circumstances have not permitted us to hold open meetings to discuss items that had to be discussed. in which case I have reached out to individual board members, as has been the custom for as long as I can remember, to confirm those decisions, either to ratify them or to gain input before making those decisions, and then going back to the board to take a decision and to take a vote. I think if someone were to go back through the votes of this board over the last 6 months, what you'd see is that the vote has been 7-0 or 6-1 occasionally, but almost entirely we have been in complete consensus. And for that, I thank the members of the board. It is, I think, also important to recognize that the president of the board is not the CEO of the board. The president is not the person who is ultimately in charge. It is the board that is in charge. And so I come to you today recognizing that we have to slow down. We have to take our time on some things now and probably take some projects and slow them down a bit and let us all catch our breath, including management. But it is not the time to give up. It's not the time to stop and say we can't do anything more. It's not the time to say we've got everything accomplished and we're finished. And I hope that no one in the audience feels that way, and I hope that no one on this board feels that way. And so my hope is for this meeting today, that as you look at the priorities, that this conversation will be about those priorities, about what we think is most important to do. We will be talking about how to fund those priorities in 2 days' time when we have our budget meeting. And I appreciate the enormous amount of work that's gone into that from staff, from our treasurer, and from our finance committee. But ultimately, it's up to the board to make those decisions about funding. And there will be some hard conversations. Maybe some of you came today looking for fireworks. The real fireworks will occur on Wednesday when we have to talk about how we spend money and what the numbers are. Ultimately, I think we are trying to make decisions that are of all of Celebration. I think all of us share the same North Star, wanting the best for this community. And so I hope that in today's discussion of the board's organizational structure, item A on this agenda, when I open up the conversation, my hope is that this is not about personalities. I particularly hope that, since I'm the personality that's probably going to get annihilated here. But I hope that we choose to keep this civil, that we model what we think good behavior ought to be like, and that we seek a consensus about the best organizational structure, the best way to proceed that is in the best interest of the community. And with that, I'm going to turn the meeting over to David to take it from here.
Yep, Keith
Before
Thompson.
that, Keith is back.
Okay, Mr. Thompson, you're back.
Yeah, I am. Is this any better?
Much better. Go ahead, sir.
All right, thanks. Sorry about that. New laptop and all that. Yeah, I just wanted to say, I know I'm a little bit late to this party, but it is on the agenda today, and it's regarding the RFP process for a lot of the rec programs. Just, I'll without boring everyone, and sorry, it's 1201 Celebration Avenue, apartment 201. My son, who is about to graduate FSU, started playing Celebration Youth Soccer, twice, the 2 sessions or whatever, and has gone all the way through it. My other son, who is asthmatic, was part of Kelly's swim club for a while when the town disbanded their own program. So I have serious concerns that some of these more rec and more affordable programs are going to be pushed out either from a timing or a resource perspective, having looked at the requirements of the RFP. So I just want to make the point that I hope that some of these not-for-profit organizations that have served this community for so long, and so many of our kids, are not going to be pushed out by for-profit or by other organizations that win any RFP. And as a final comment, I will be asking to see some of the board packets, etc., because they're not online, but I sincerely hope that anybody that has a conflict of interest or any perception of a conflict of interest has been totally recusing themselves from discussions around this process. So that was it. Thanks. Just wanted to say, don't forget, we've got a lot of kids that have grown up with the programs that we've had in place, and they don't need to be kicked out by for-profit organizations.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. I appreciate it. All right, at this time, I'm going to turn the meeting over to David.
Thank you. Just as a bit of background, this time for this meeting was originally for a different purpose. It was about covenants and about the communications about covenants, if I'm correct. And Stacy.
And personnel.
And personnel related to that. And that was going to be an executive session. Several board members approached me, and collectively we agreed that we needed to defer that and supplant that with a meeting of the whole. So there were 4 board members out of 7 of us who saw a need to have something more urgent. And that's why we called this meeting and replaced the other, which may be happening in other vehicles and so forth. We also asked our counsel, Tom Slayton, to be here, so we're thankful for that. I'm glad we have people online and people in the room. I think to echo what Jackson has said, what all of us want, and I expect that people will disagree if they do, is that we want what is best for the community. That's why we ran to serve in this volunteer position, and why those in the audience who served on the board before and who served on other committees or task forces or serve on those today. I think that's why they're serving. We want what's best for the community. I think, as Jackson said very well, I think that there's a piece that was left out when we talk about we had COVID, and then we had the RFP process, and then we had the decision in the RFP process before we made a decision about who the finalists would be that caused even more turmoil with the incumbent. And then we had a selection, and then we had the transition. Just to be fair, there was lots that didn't get done over a long period of time before Grand Manners took the helm 2 months in advance of what we initially anticipated. So that was November 1st. And then there was, as you said very well, we've had a lot of activity, many things done, whether that's contractors that management oversees or management doing things themselves. We've had more volunteers this year than in the past. But again, the overall goal I think for all of us, and the purpose of this discussion today, is to put management in the best possible position to succeed long-term, So when we put this, I took primary lead to put this specific agenda together, but the call was from 3 others. So I think Jackson said, well, as we're thinking about what's best for the community, I think also what's important is that through this discussion of the board, our owners' comments are now complete. If we have time, we can take others, but we may not have time. But I think what's important is that the board have a dialogue, the board has the oversight, and that we stay professional, we stay cordial, we stay respectful, and that we not be personal. I think that there are some issues that, I can start with some, but there were some things that have happened recently that caused concern and caused us to call this question today about what is the appropriate role of the president? What is the appropriate role of the president? I think a piece of context with that is this is not about the person in the role today. This is about the person in the role today and the person in the role tomorrow and the person in the role the next day. Now, a new board, when one gets elected come March, may have a different take on this, but this is our take as we talk about it today. Some of these may be new ideas, some may not be new ideas, some we may have heard before. So I think I think the theme is all of our voices are important. Every single vote is equal when we have had meetings. I think Jackson said usually it's 7-0, 7-0, and sometimes 6-1, or usually the one. I'm often the one. But it's about every voice. Every person has an equal voice. So as we go through today, there's 2 different parts. One is board organizational structure, and then those priorities. Because I think one of the things that feeds into the organizational structure has been everything's a priority. Everything has been a priority. Let's get it all done. We have a voracious appetite. Many of us are impatient, and will speak for myself, and we want it all done yesterday. But that's impossible if our goal is to put management in the best possible position to succeed long term. So it's a matter today of mid-year. We're right at 6 months. Jackson said that. We're right at 6 months into this board's term, and we're approaching 12 months into Grand Manor's tenure. It's how do we have a reset? How do we step back? How do we slow down? How do we take a fresh look? And that's what today is. And out of today, in terms of organizational structure, I'm going to come forward with some suggestions. I think a sneak preview was my closing board member comment from the last board meeting is let's have one meeting a month. Only one meeting a month. Workshop is needed, one board meeting a month. So, but let's talk about if we can, the role of the president, and thoughts, issues. Anyone want to start? Before I do have some suggestions, but what's the role of the?
I just want to ask a question to Tom before we move any further. So this is my board binder that I received when we started the year. And the contract for management is in here, correct? Is that the full contract?
I believe so, but I haven't
Okay.
reviewed yours to compare.
Okay, so does it say anywhere in the contract that, or tell me where it says in the contract that we have to operate with a one voice policy?
I think your one voice policy is a combination of your desire to communicate as one voice to management and the references in the contract to, I think as Jackson said, not receiving different direction from different board members.
But it doesn't say that specifically in the contract, one voice. That
No,
we're-
it doesn't use the term one voice. I
Okay,
think
thank
that's a
you.
term.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding
Yeah, I
that.
think that's a term that you all have developed
Well-
through your operation. But it
Okay.
means to me, and I can compare it not just to management, but to my interactions.
Okay,
with board
just-
members.
Brian, then Bill.
Yeah, I mean, I've got it here. So it doesn't use the exact term one voice, no. The CCM contract did, by the way. But what it does say is for CROA managers, managing agent can rely on the CROA president. So I mean, in my conceptual understanding, by the way, I think several of us have used the one voice.
You may have started it.
Well, it was there on CCSC. I mean, it did not make this contract in those words, but it made it in implied words, in my opinion.
What you said. Okay.
So let me throw in a comment before we get to the role of president a little, because I think it might as well help shape this. There's obviously people online, there's people in the room, and a lot of interest. When we started with Grant Manors, we thought the transition was going to take 12 months. It has become clear to me that it's not going to take 12 months. It's going to take longer. We had the finance committee meeting, and Jackson talked about Wednesday, but it's Thursday's the budget meeting. For example, well, no, I'm not
Sorry, you
criticizing.
don't know
I'm
the day of
just-
the week.
for people who want to come. But, you know, for example, we've got 22 new employees, including 3 things. So we've replaced most of the staff. So we've really had a training type environment the whole time. Which just takes time. We've had certainly IT challenges and stuff like that. So when I look at where we're at, and I look at whether it's covenants and a lot of other things, I think management has to be given time to get their feet on the ground. Jackson had a very aggressive strategy, and that's not a criticism at all. We've all been part of every single board member and known that. Where I think we're at as a board and prioritization is, all right, with the acknowledgement that we're not going to have a quick transition, but it's going to take more time because of a bunch of new employees, a bunch of other stuff going on. I mean, I think it's an 18-month transition. I'm just being honest. I used that comment the other day in the finance committee, and I still think that they started 11/1. I think we're still 6-7 months away. And my thoughts are that we have to slow the whole process down to allow management to get day-to-day operations under control. I mean, I I've been on this board for 5 years, and I run into people and they have no clue that I'm on the Crow board. They don't have a clue that I've ever been the Crow president. There's a lot of people in this room and a few people online who this turns their world, but in 5 years, I played golf with a lot of people, beat a lot of people. My wife and I ran into a person like the other day of the election, and what he said is, "Oh, you're on Crow? Well, let me just give you one comment. You want to talk about the phone system?" And I told him we got a new phone system coming. He said, "Well, you can fix the phone system. This is great, but fixing the phone system, I think on covenants, I just think we've moved too damn fast. I think my analogy, and this is going to be a goofy analogy, is if 100 is perfect and we used to be at 80 or 85 and we slipped to 50, we're not going to go back to 85 in one day. We can get there in steps. Fixing the management stuff means other things need to get heard, which affects president. And that's where I'm coming from on this. I think now is the magic time to have the reset and say, where the heck are we at 7-8 months into the reality of Grand Manners and the transition?
Yeah. Just before you go there, to me, stepping back with that is one of the things that we said as a board when we started 6 months ago is, what is our role? It's high-level policy. We also said we are going to stay out of the weeds. And I think we've lost that. So to your point, for the board, staying more at the high level, staying out of the weeds. Yeah.
I was going to say, if the one voice policy is not encapsulated anywhere, and I don't remember, it's been a few years, whether it's in the covenants or not, then the alternative is, what is the method? I have had Lauren's role on properties, not lately, but early in my life. And how do I take direction from two different people, particularly when the direction is contradictory? So if it's not one voice, what is it? How do we replace that? But certainly it can't be this and that on different days. Do this and then here's the opposite tomorrow. So it's a management question. It's not unique to this situation. Whether we're in a corporation and you have two vice presidents and they're giving opposite direction, it's the same situation. So if it's not one voice, then how do we do it?
You on the line?
No, whomever, Jim?
Yeah, David, we exchanged emails, all of us back and forth, and I tried to ask you questions, and you said it would be better to be talked about as a group.
Yeah.
So can you tell me what you and Brian and Celia and Cindy thought was so urgent in the last week, presumably with management and they're being overloaded?
I think I'll start with that. There were several things that happened to me that started a couple of weeks ago when a decision was made for the covenants to go on moratorium without a group discussion. To me, that was the initial trigger. And it was then represented to the community, because I had residents come to me and said, "Why did you as a board decide that?" Well, we didn't decide that. So that was the first. There was another discussion after that that several of us were involved with, where promises were made to tackle 3 projects. We have these here, Theater, Lakeside, and 851, and we're going to do them all getting started in September. And then there was a discussion, there was a draft video that was prepared to the community with the direction to go out, and we reviewed it. Some of us reviewed it and thought that there were inaccuracies and should not go out to the community.
And all of this,
those are things that called the question to answer your question. What made that more urgent? We needed to halt that behavior.
And since you mentioned my name, say that for 2 months, there's been discrepancies amongst the board on certain things that we're finding out through the community and not even as board members, that there's things going on that certain board members have certain information. And I've been requesting, I put it as a family meeting, for us to meet as a group. And was told, actually, which is true, you can't meet 4 because that becomes a quorum. Well, we have to figure out a way to meet. Twice I requested it. Well, we can have one-on-ones. No, when there's something broken and needs to be fixed, you can't have a one-on-one, because by the time it gets back as a consensus, it's going to be a totally different conversation. And I requested it twice, and when everything's came to light last week, I was for this meeting. We need to have this meeting. In order for us to go forward, we need to all be on the same page and not find out information through the grapevine as a board member. So I requested this a couple of times, and now we have the meeting, and now we're sitting here and we're trying to have a discussion so we can move forward without any dysfunction in our board. That's
Okay.
okay.
Makes sense. So basically, this has happened in the past week and a half, all of these events that you're talking about.
That's what caused us.
In the
to shift
last
meeting.
week, in the last week and a half, correct?
Whatever it is, 2 weeks, yeah, week and a half, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
He's talking specifically about the things that triggered him.
That triggered me.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
That happens.
only speaking for me.
Appreciate that. Okay. So had a board meeting scheduled for the 24th. And basically, the 4 of you said, do we need to have that? You know, like, why do we need to do that? Can we just cancel that because our 27th got moved to the 3rd and the 10th, and it just seemed like there's too many in August?
This happened after that decision was made to cancel the meeting on the 24th.
I understand that, but I'm saying there is, to me, from my perspective, people on this board who want to get something done and people who want to obstruct. And so what happens is when people obstruct, there is dissension. And that dissension then becomes the reason to potentially reward that. So I don't like that.
I don't think we're obstructing, I
But-
think we're speaking. We don't all need to agree or disagree on anything. We're all individual board members, and we're not obstructing anything. Because we don't agree with the project doesn't mean that we're obstructing anything. We're trying to move forward in a positive way.
Actually, what I want to answer that though.
Mhm.
We are a board of 7. So
Right.
that means majority has input. So to say that 1 or 2 or 3 people want to do something, and the other 4 want to obstruct is
I didn't
incorrect.
mention numbers, Brian. I didn't say.
You said
You-
our
you-
names,
you-
that's 4 of us.
No, you said there's a group that wants to proceed, and
Yeah,
a
I
group that
did.
wants to obstruct. What I'm
You
saying
put
is,
yourself in the group, is what I'm saying. I didn't put any individual person in either one of those groups.
I didn't put anybody in a group. I just simply said to say there's a group that wants to obstruct and a group that wants to proceed is incorrect. We are a board of 7. That is what we have to discuss because we move forward as a board in majority opinion. We don't have leaders and followers. That's my point.
Can I?
Yeah, sure.
I want to be very clear to not be defensive. But I want to apply to those 3 items that you described, because I think they require some explanation. And I'll start by simply saying I'm sorry to each of you that I did not do a better job of communicating what was happening. The moratorium was a request from management because things were going south so quickly, so dramatically. We couldn't get letters printed. We couldn't get one letter sent out. There were duplicate letters. They were coming out with the wrong dates, the wrong information. Our covenants committee was grinding down. And the request was made to me to stop for a short period of time doing inspections. And I agreed to that at the request of management. And I apologize that I didn't go to each of you. There was no board meeting on the schedule for me to be able to request that. And we didn't have the time to let it continue to pile up and become chaotic. And so I made that decision, and I apologize that it wasn't communicated as well as it should have been. I did speak with a number of you, but not every member of the board before making that decision. The second thing that David mentioned was that I talked about 3 projects. What he's talking about is I had a conversation with Brian and David and Lauren and Paige Pierce from the Celebration Company. I think it's relatively well known on this board that I am a negotiator. I've saved this board $500,000 in the contract with Grand Manners. I saved us probably somewhere in the area of 1.5 or $1.6 million with the school district by my negotiating tactics. Some of you have been on the other end of my negotiating tactics and you don't like it much. I understand that. My comment to Paige was with respect to 851 Lakeside and the theater. And he said, are you going to take those off the table? And I said to him, no, they're all still open projects. I didn't say we'd do them in September. I'm sorry you heard it that way, David. I didn't say that. What I was trying to do, and Paige, if you're listening, there goes my negotiating tactic. I was trying to keep everything on the table long enough that we could make some decisions. I wasn't speaking for the board. I was doing what the board presidents have always done in these discussions with the Celebration Company, which is to try and be a conduit of information and to tell our friends at Disney what we're trying to do. And Paige has been a good partner. He has supported the work that we're doing. I understand that that comment deeply offended Brian and David because I didn't clear it with them before I said it. He asked the question, I answered the question, and I answered it as a negotiator would answer it, not because I was trying to say we're absolutely going forward in all 3. In point of fact, I had had conversations with many members of this board in which I had said, I thought it was time to do what Brian said. We need to slow down. We need to give management some time. We probably need to push some of these projects back for consideration. The third thing is the draft video, which most of you in the audience are going, what the heck is he talking about? I had prepared a mid-year report to the community of what this board has done and what management has done. It was a celebration of the things that we've done. Many of you know that my preferred method of communication is via video. Some of you truly dislike that approach. Some of you, I think, have appreciated it, but it is my style. I was preparing to send to the board to look at, and then I would recut and edit it. At 4 a.m. on Monday morning, I got worried that my brother-in-law was in a coma. I was going to die. And I had to get on a plane and go to Denver, which is where I've been for the last week. I buried my brother-in-law on Saturday. I was foolish in trying to do my CROA work in the few hours that I had between finding out that information and booking an airline ticket. And so I sent a draft of the video to the members of the board to ask them to look at it. And I said to Lauren, please post this tomorrow. That was ill-advised of me. It was a mistake. But it wasn't a mistake made out of hubris or a mistake made because I wanted to take away the authority of the board. It was a mistake made in an attempt to get this information out. Some members of this board are prepared to see everything that I do as some sort of a crazed power grab by a mad scientist. Okay. I've been here 25 years. If you don't like me, you didn't like me 25 years ago, you still don't. That's not the point. The point is that I was trying to get information out to the community. When the comments came back from board members as I was boarding my airplane, I saw that there were mistakes in the video, and I would have expected those. And in normal circumstances, I would have said, no problem, gone back into the studio and recut the video. It's not quite the same as writing an email. But I couldn't do that. And so I immediately said, please pull the video. And that's why none of you have seen it. It's not available. We didn't do it. But to be clear, I could take my right as a director during director's comments, and I could have read that script at the next board meeting. There's nothing that would have stopped me from doing that. That is not my goal or intention. And frankly, David, to hold that against me is, I think, not fair. And so I want us to be able to move forward. Celia, I want you to be heard. I want you to have the opportunity to contribute in more ways than you do already. Cindy, I know you have been unhappy with my leadership style from the outset. But I also know that you've contributed enormously to this board, and I want your contribution to continue. And so if these three things are the things that cause all of you to believe that I'm not fit for leadership, okay, bring it up, take your vote. But recognize that if that's your goal today, that you place a cloud over the head of every future president of this board, you make it possible for any board member at any time to remove an officer of this board without notice and without putting it on the agenda as an action item. You create uncertainty for the community and for the board that I think is deeply hurtful. It's not about me. It's just not. And I appreciate David's comments that this is about the role of the president. I invite you now to say what that role should be, and I will do my best to affect that role and to do it with honor and integrity. I've done nothing wrong. There is no malfeasance here. I have not broken any laws. I have not violated the charter or the statute. I've asked Tom that question. Can I ask it to you again?
Yes.
Have I violated any rule or charter, part of the charter?
No.
No. And if I had, what would have been your response?
My responsibility, if I was aware of that, would be to inform you and then to inform the board.
Okay. So having said that, I hope now that our conversation can turn to more positive aspects, which are the priorities and the things that we need to do and what the role of the president should be. I'll turn it back to you.
David, I didn't get a
Yeah,
chance to speak.
go ahead.
Okay. Do you want to? No, I think, okay.
Yeah, just in comment, those were initial three triggers. There's others in my head, but those were the three triggers. And I know, that was just one voice, so there were others.
Jackson, we all, and again, this is not, about you and personalities and all that kind of stuff. There's not one of us that sits on this board that doesn't recognize that you are a master negotiator. After your last comments, it's clear to everybody that you're a persuasive debater. Okay? And I don't know why you say that I've not been happy with your leadership from the get-go. If you recall, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, I was new to this board, maybe 2 weeks, and you took it upon yourself to call me as a fellow board member who just got elected and chew me out in no uncertain terms. How dare I meet with a particular resident? Okay? And you weren't the president then, you were just another schmo like the rest of us. Okay? So I just want to, and I don't have a problem with your leadership. I perceive the role as the board president to be a good manager. And frankly, I think that's out of your wheelhouse. You're very task oriented, you're used to doing whatever it takes to get the job done, and I certainly appreciate that. But I believe that the president needs to have some kind of a managerial background. I understand you own your own company, but I've had the benefit of growing in a business over 28 years, seeing good managers and bad managers, not to say where you fall in that, Jackson, please don't misunderstand. But there is something that sets a good manager apart from the others. They're collaborative. They don't push too hard. Many of the things that you send us say, I'm going to do this or send this out unless I hear differently from you. A manager would say, here's my recommendation. What are your thoughts? Can we, do we need to talk about this, or, do I have, a consensus from everybody? There's just, it's those subtle little things that make a good manager. I don't know how much time you spend with the staff here, but you were constantly, Let me back up a little bit. Prior to the transition, 3 of us were named to be the liaisons of the transition. David was to be the liaison with communications. I was to be the liaison with operations. And I don't, forgive me, and I'm not trying to be funny, I don't remember exactly what your role was, but you were part of the 3 of us. All I remember hearing was, leave them alone, leave them alone, leave them alone, don't micromanage, don't do this, don't do this. Nobody ever asked me for my input in anything that had to operations here. And for those of you who don't know, I worked for CMC years ago. So I've got a good idea of what happens behind the scenes. I don't know how or if David was involved at all, but I know that I wasn't. And as things began to surface with the issues of the covenants, one of which was the properties getting in the right villages and stuff like that. I guarantee you, had I been made aware of that during the transition, I could have stopped that. Because I don't know if those, if you folks even remember the old CCMC numbers, they had 2 digits, 4 digits, blah, blah, blah. They all meant something. The first 2 digits signified pro. The second 2 digits signified what village you were in. 05 was East Village, 06 was South Village, okay? The next 4 digits were the lot number within that village. And the last 2 numbers were the number of the owner. You know, if you were the first owner, second owner, whatever. If you were a service area, if you lived in a service area, those of you are probably all familiar with what that is, the account number mirrored that of the Corona number, except it started with a 4. So it's either 4A, 4B, 4L as in Artisan Park. You know, so you could easily, if somebody had the foresight to say, well, wait a minute, you know, before you, just get rid of all this information, print out a list that has account numbers and property addresses. And maybe some of this issue that we've had for all these months could have been avoided. In fact, I think they're still trying to make sure they have the mapping 100% correct on this. You know,
that finished yesterday.
Yeah, okay, so I mean, look how long it's taken. So it's not, and again, it's not about personalities. I just think, and God knows how valuable you are to this board, Jackson, with the things that you've done and the money you've saved us and found us. I found us some money too. But I think that's the piece that's missing. You know, it's management skills. And, you may be willing, but I don't know that you can adapt. That's how I feel.
Jim,
I'm still confused. So the trigger that you said for you was concern for the management company. But all you mentioned were 3 incidents that happened with Jackson. Cindy says, I don't know anything against you, but let me tell you how you suck as a manager,
She
right?
didn't say that. She did not say that, Jim.
I didn't
And
quote her.
this is
He's
why.
got the floor, he's got
I
the floor.
didn't quote her.
Okay.
I'll be politically correct. She heavily inferred that he was a very poor manager. Okay, so being that this happened when he was away, dealing with a death in the family, and it just happened last Thursday, that this came to my eyes. 4 other people may have seen it before me, but
nobody saw it.
Nobody.
okay, fine,
I wrote it.
okay. So
But those situations
So-
predated Texas leaving town, just to be very clear.
they were intermixed.
No, the video happened before. We saw it.
Right before, after he heard and before he could leave town.
Go ahead.
The fact that we have to kind of walk through with this proves to me personally, this is not about the presidency. This is about Jackson.
It's about, just to reshape that, it's about redefining the role of the president because speaking as one person, some things seem to be getting out of hand. It's time to talk. That's what we're doing.
Have you talked to Jackson about this before you guys decided to do this?
No, he was not here. That's 4 people called for the meeting so we can have a group discussion. That's why we're here.
That's very curious timing.
So I clearly stated that I requested a group meeting 2 months ago, before this even happened, with David, with his issues, with Brian, with his issues, with Cindy, with her issues, with me, with my issues, me personally being micromanaged by certain board members. We're one voice, it's in our contract. We're one voice, it's in our contract. So I requested a meeting so I can make sure moving forward that every time I send Lauren an email, I have to second guess myself as a board member who is elected to this board by the residents of Celebration. Every time I send an email, am I going to get a response saying you shouldn't be doing this? Or am I going to get a text saying you shouldn't be doing this, shouldn't be? I mean, I don't want to get into a pissing match here. All I know is I asked for this 2 months ago. David and Brian, it came to realization with David and Brian, maybe we need to have this meeting. But I asked for my own benefit so that we can get along and move forward.
Brian?
To say that this came up in the last 2 weeks is just not correct. This conversation has been ensuing for a while, so let's be honest. Jackson and I have had many conversations. We have coffee all the time to talk. So the whole thing's been evolving. There's been a request by both Celia and Cindy to have a conversation. David and I both hit the point where we said, it's time to have a conversation. I wasn't wanting this conversation to become personalized. Days went out of control. I was wanting this to be about the president and priorities. And I'd still like this to be about the president and priorities. Go ahead.
I would too. I'd like it to be about president and priorities. By the way, all of this list of priorities, we as a board voted to move forward with them. That's why we are moving forward with them.
And that's what we're
reassess that has nothing really to do with the presidency. Okay?
You don't need to holler when you're in a microphone. Please.
I'm not hollering. I have emotion and I'm not.
So do all of us.
It has to do with the presidency in that the president needs to agree with us as to the priority. So that is the conversation.
Okay, agree with whom?
We need a group conversation about what we agreed to as a group.
4 people talked behind the scenes or communicated in some way and came up with this.
4 people have the ability to call a meeting. That's the only thing 4 people can do. 4 people without a public session, and you can correct me where I get it wrong, can't decide anything. And we did not have a meeting because that would have been a quorum. We just simply said, as a result of emails, we need to have a meeting.
I did not say you had a meeting. I did not
say that. I'm making it very clear because you're getting emotional. So I'm just coming back and saying, we're having a meeting to have a discussion.
You know, that's me. Everyone knows that. Some people can be critical of it. That's fine. That's who I am. I'm here for 3 years, okay? So I'm not going to try to be politically correct or calm when this is basically a coup. We elected a president.
Okay.
And for 4 people to decide in a week and a half in the middle of the year that he shouldn't be president.
How can it be a coup? No one has asked for his job. We asked for a simple conversation.
We're having a conversation. We're trying to.
Are we going to have any emotions today? Because you said, you told one of the residents that this was going to be discussion only. Is this going to be a discussion only meeting?
I'm having a discussion.
We're discussing.
You didn't answer my question.
Not my intention to make a motion. I'm on board.
David, is it your intention to make a motion to
It's a
remove
discussion
Jackson?
meeting. If a motion happens, it happens. There's no intention. The intention is to figure out our path forward.
So
I think there will be motions. I think there will be motions today.
Do you intend
I will make some motions.
You're gonna make, you're still thinking about this.
No, I'm gonna
You're
make some.
still like
motions.
listening to what I'm saying and maybe someone else is saying and
There
saying,
will be
okay.
motions made. There will be motions made. I've already said I have some specific things about the role of the president.
Tom, can I ask you if we say if we announce to the residents that it's discussion only and there's no board packet? Does that make a difference whether we can make decisions?
So does the notice of the meeting say only discussion and no board vote?
No, one of the board members directly responded to a resident and said, there's no board packet, it's discussion only.
Allegedly responded.
I wrote an email. In response to Keith Thompson, I said there is no board
I'm sorry.
package. It's a
There is no
discussion.
board
Yeah, there's no packet.
I mean, I can tell you exactly what we're talking about.
I made
But
the
if
same thing. There is no board packet.
Well, to answer your question, I'm looking at the agenda for today's meeting, right? So, the board has the authority to make motions and approve or disapprove any of the items that are on, this agenda.
I'm not talking about what we can do as board members.
Okay.
I'm talking about our relationship with the residents.
So far what I've heard is, can the board take a vote on an action item here if one board member may have told another homeowner?
One board member responding to an email to the entire board.
So Tom, just so it's perfectly clear, Keith Thompson sent an email to the board saying, and Lauren, I believe, saying there's no package. Is there going to be a package? I responded saying there is not a board
Excuse me, I'm
package.
going to ask the audience, we can hear you and the microphone's picking up your conversations, so you're being recorded, Jack.
We can go back and listen.
So I just responded, there is no board package. This is a discussion meeting.
Okay.
That's what I said.
All right.
I wasn't trying to do anything else.
Right, and I will say the same thing. People reach out to me and said, where's the board packet? I go, there is no packet, because I think when there's a board packet, it has to do with management and us approving
Action items.
action items that the management company is proposing to us. So there is no board packet because management isn't proposing anything to us. It's discussion, and we as a board, do we have the right to make a motion during this meeting?
Yeah, I think that's Jim's question too, and the answer is yes.
You
Yes.
definitely have the right. I'm talking about accountability to the residents. To put board organizational structure when you intend to do something that hasn't happened in the history of this town, remove a president in the middle of his 1-year term. I think the community should know about that ahead of time. I think that it should not be made very quickly, because that's what's happening now. Seems like it's being jammed through. And I have concern for that, both from a process perspective and also what it is.
Jim, think about what you're saying.
I do.
Really? Well, no, just here.
Well, don't start something like that with me and say, think about what you're saying.
Comma.
Don't talk down to me, just talk to me.
And this is why I called for a family meeting, because in emails, you don't want us to hang our laundry out, but in emails and texts, it's always about the lecture. It's like, if we're one of 7 and we're all in this together, there shouldn't be a lecture, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't be this, and I'm not even referring to Jackson here as president. I'm not referring to Jackson. Anybody says anything, if there's $1 on the table, you're going after $2 to the residents. So this is about what our president is. I always like coming to the board meetings and listening to the board, that the president meets with the management company once a week, gets a report from management, gives it back to the board. Just like in the past, if a board liaison went to a Parks and Rec committee meeting, they would give the report back to the board, and we would be all on board with knowing what's going on in the community. That doesn't happen anymore. There's no updates from any of the committee meetings. Brian, I think, is the only one that sends the updates in regards to Parks and Rec. I will ask, do you need a report from special events? Granted, special events may not be as important as governance and the rec, but no, we don't need that. But it is important that the community hear what's going on with each individual committee, because then we're not sideswiped when we find out that the 4th of July, our whole management team was out till 1:30 in the morning. So I just thought the role as the president was to work with management, Lauren, meet with her once a week. Not maybe meet with Roger or anybody else. Nobody needs to meet with anybody except for Lauren. She's our executive director. That's what I think the role as president is, but I could be wrong.
Celia, you're saying a lot of good things there. Cindy had something, I think Bill had something, but I think that would transition us to, let's define the role of the president. You had several things in there, so I want to capture them. Cindy, do you?
What I was going to say was, A says board organizational structure. And anybody who saw that interpreted it however they wanted to interpret it. To follow that with a number 1, should we decide to get rid of Jackson Mummy as our president? Would have been unkind, it would have been premature, it would have been uncalled for, and it would have been wrong.
It would have been accurate. It would have been accurate. And I'm happy if you're stepping back from the ledge. I'm happy. I'm happy. And if you could tell me this now, then I can be quiet for the rest of the meeting.
Who's stepping back from the ledge? Who's stepping back from the ledge? Who's on the
Cindy,
ledge?
did you?
I was talking into the microphone.
Did
I'm
you-
not stepping away from the ledge.
Did you finish?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Bill, did you have something?
A couple of different thoughts. As some of you know, I was in a very unusual place last week with practically no internet, well, no internet and no phone either. And so I didn't hear about any of this till Friday. So I'm going to jump around a bunch of different points people have said here. While I understand that the 4 board members can make a call for this and change the meeting and all that, I would comment that there was no attempt made to reach me either. And I would have liked to have at least had a heads up on this. And since I have heard about this on Friday, I've talked to the number of you individually and given us a great deal of thought. And I think that my own line, I'm trying to sort out actual management decisions from places where people feel they should have been involved. And granted, I agree with the letter thing. Having been a manager myself, some decisions just have to be made now. You can't take a poll of everybody. It's not management by committee, it's management. So I can understand sometimes a decision must be made. So then I'm thinking, well, then management and reviewing what the responsibilities are is probably a good thing. But I keep thinking about, well, what are the actual sins here? Where are the high crimes and misdemeanors? And all I'm getting so far is that it's degree. Jackson is trying too hard and moving too fast. And maybe that's, accurate to revisit that and see if there's a better way of doing it. I certainly think that we all agree that we were hoping to slow down a little bit over the next few months as we get caught up here. Not that we're still in a pushy mood here, moving things along. So maybe that problem kind of helps solves itself. But they're having crises, and having been the person managing the crises, I know sometimes I didn't have a chance to call anybody, including my boss. We will now call the fire department, which is a real life situation. We're not going to vote on it. So I think those are issues, but in a personal note, I find it difficult to be critical of anybody trying too hard. Now, so that takes us back to the manner of doing that, and maybe we can set some other ways of doing it, and I think that's a valid discussion, and I'd like to stick with that and figure out if there's better ways of doing this. But I'm going to jump down to number 7, Celebration Hall, theater, lakeside, all that good stuff. Uh, At the moment, they are probably putting a burden on Grand Manners. But that's under the assumption, and going forward, that's an even bigger uh, uh, burden. But this going to the assumption that's the only way to do business, and it's not. Having worked for a management company, we had a management division, a development division, and a construction division. And we would sometimes manage projects. I've personally been clerk of the works on projects and stuff. Sometimes we didn't. But all of these projects, I never felt that they needed to be Grand Manners, and I never thought that we needed to talk about it yet, because we're all at the planning process. We don't have any projects. All we're doing is gathering information, and we can do that as fast or as slowly as we want, which gives us the opportunity to back burner some of these projects. I have personal favorite is the one that should go on the front burner, which we're sitting in, because I think that'll solve some of our community problems, and we can do it with the least amount of wear and tear on what to do with the staff while we're trying to find new space. There's a lot of positives to it. Now, well, the degree of that, we haven't decided. It's a planning thing. But certainly when we get into actual project development, design, construction, there's companies that do that for a living. We don't need to put that burden on Grand Manners. And there's a management reasons why we might want a third party involved here, because you already got the architect and the contractor, because you're also laying off the liability on a third party if anything goes wrong. Got a construction manager who's out there looking at stuff and planning stuff. So I'm just saying that it doesn't need to be a burden, and there's other ways of doing it, which are commonly used. This is not a one of or something I'm making up. Design build is something that I think was discussed here once before. So thinking as far as how we take care of that, I think that we just take the 3 projects, keep them in planning mode, which we can do as indefinitely as we want. Certainly because there's financial issues we need to resolve about them, but we don't have any numbers to know what they cost. We're trying to find ways to get those numbers, but it's still a planning process, and Grand Manners has been giving out task orders based on our guidance to go find people to give us this kind of information. But we can also manage the degree of their role in that. So, but sticking back, circling all the way back to the president's role and the degree of that role, I think we can work on that. I think we need to.
So can we use that as a jumping? I want to watch our time.
Oh, wow.
No, yeah, I know we're more than halfway through. Can we talk specifically about the role of the president? You talked about concern about trying too hard and degrees. So can we, I mean, I can put 7 things on the table for us to discuss and then get to the prioritization of those.
Well, the thing I'm hearing about the president's doing too much.
Right.
Well, I don't know the measurement of that. And if there's too much communication that's going with Grand Manners and it's slowing them down, I think we would need to hear that. Yeah. And if pick those apart and find a better way of making it move forward.
Celia? No.
As far as what Bill said about important things that would make the president act on our behalf. Being on board for the first time last year, the only thing I can remember of importance that we needed to all be all hands on deck a certain day in a specific time frame, that Cindy even had her cell phone for this, was during something that we needed all to be a consensus of the board.
Wasn't there a legal issue that we had
It was
to
a
be on call
legal
for?
issue, and Jackson
That's
was
fine.
part of this litigation. That was the only time that I think with anything, in any of our scope of work with Grand Manners, that was the emergency. Anything else doesn't need to be acted on immediately. I'm sorry, that's how I feel. We're all part of this board and we all need to make a decision together as one voice.
How do we do that? What's the shortest time we can call a board meeting? And again, this takes us back to management. What is the right time to set up an emergency board meeting, notice it and do all the stuff we have to do? And what degree of decision does that require? And I'm not challenging you, I'm just saying,
No, I
we can't
understand.
get from here to there without defining those
In the
things.
past, we have emails that go back and forth, just letting us know what's going on, giving us a heads up. Oh, we're gonna put out, if anything, with the moratorium and covenants, Cindy, being the board liaison, should have been right in the thick of that, because she sits through those meetings hour after hour. And it was like, whoa, did you know about that moratorium? She's the board
Chairman,
liaison.
then let's focus on.
Oh, wait, can I ask first? What does the statute say? Say it's some kind of a real emergency would arise. Do you have to get 48 hours notice? Is there a provision for that in the statute?
Yes, in chapter 720 and your governing documents, it says the same thing. If you have an emergency, and it has to be a real emergency, then you can hold a meeting without the required notice. But
Right.
those items are limited. They have to be a true emergency. And then you vote only on that emergency item.
Is there a definition of emergency?
There's not a definition of statute. It's more of a common law case by case. So for example, buildings on fire, that's an emergency. We forgot to budget for something and we need to go ahead and make an amendment to it. That's a regular meeting. Hurricane is an emergency.
Covenants would not be an emergency.
No.
So are we saying that any time the board speaks to management with a decision, it should be voted on, no matter what it is? Or is hopefully there's some common sense here.
Can you, that's an excellent question. Can you write that down so we don't lose it? Because I think it might be embedded in what I would propose, if that makes sense. Jim, does that make?
It does, but
Okay.
there's no response to what I said.
So here's some specifics. Role of president, one board meeting a month, starting in September. One board meeting a month. Second, workshops on an as agreed basis, i.e. budget's a workshop. There have been several times that it's like, oh, we need to workshop that. We need an hour on that. But we don't want to take the time in a board meeting and we haven't really had workshops. Communications task advisor group or the follow on to that has asked, we need to really talk this through.
Well, you're saying one board meeting, one workshop.
Max.
Do you propose holding us to the previously agreed upon 2 hours, or it takes
Again, we
as
can
long as it
specify,
takes?
I'm not putting that in there. I'm just saying, let's limit it to
I'm
one.
just asking.
I'm one who thinks we can be efficient in meetings.
I'm
Go ahead.
confused. Is this a suggestion? Because it kind of sounds like it's motion-ish. Because
It can move to motion, but let me put these on the table and we can talk. This is helping to, this helps to define the role of the president. Because I think there's some other things that still aren't on the table, but again, the president has one weekly status meeting with the executive director and one other board member attending. Notes to the board to follow, meaning when Jack was president, maybe with Leonard, the vice president, you would have a meeting with management, you send a note to the board. If I had a meeting, which I rarely did because I chose not to, but if there was a meeting, there'd be a note when Brian and so forth. So one status meeting, there's only one meeting between, only one.
just really quick.
Not 2, not 3, not 10.
Just really quick, I want to reiterate what I said in the last board meeting when you brought this up in that meeting. Is for me, there is too much work to do. We had a whole, we basically, kind of chose probably in retrospect a poor time in the history to switch, but it needed to be done. I respected that you guys made. But what I'm trying.
Go ahead.
We're playing catch up.
Okay.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, there's an urgency for catch up. There's an urgency because people are coming out of COVID. There's a lot of urgency here. People think the town is deteriorating. Many people said that before our board started. So that to me is an urgency that requires additional work. You know, I'm taking time away from my job, and, you know, if I knew this was going to be 2 hours instead of 1, I wouldn't have agreed to 2 o'clock. Just saying.
I think you said in the email to please put aside.
Yeah, so,
Let's not argue that.
I'm sorry.
so
Go ahead,
the
continue.
intent, part of my intent is we're, not Tom, 7 of us are volunteers. Lauren and her staff are not. That manage. Limit the time. I know of prior board members who would show up, I'm not looking at anyone in the room, but because they're not in the room, who would show up and just kind of, hey, I'm here. I'm letting myself into the offices. I'm going to go see what's going on. No, management manages. We said 6 months ago, we're going to step back and be more professional. Let's step back and be more professional. Let management manage. There'll be one scheduled meeting, only one, with another person to touch base. No phone calls, no, nothing. If there's an emergency or something that we need to have the board weigh in, yes. But other than that, no, that limits our time. Email correspondence between the CROA board president and executive director should copy the board as a whole. Board members, other than the president, are not to direct board members, so that's the rest of us, are not to directly email the executive director unless it's in regard to an issue where they are the board liaison. The board president should always be copied. Board president communications to residents are to be reviewed by the board in advance. This includes any presidential videos at board meetings or any other correspondence. And it's the responsibility of the executive director to make sure the whole board is kept apprised of all activities underway by way of management reports. To the way that you might suggest. So those are 7 thoughts to try to, it's to limit our involvement, but to your point, we're still involved, and let management bring things to us as a board and say, here are 3 options for your consideration. We recommend number 2. And then, or even if we go to the example of the moratorium, might there be something else? Because a lot of it was pent up and avoided or not addressed, and for lots of issues. But what sort of message is that setting? And it's, anyway. So Jim,
Right. So to encompass what you really just heard is let management manage. I guarantee you, Tom will tell you that the contract says they're in charge of running the town. The board is to give board oversight. We've had too damn many board members, and I can point 5 fingers at myself, who do too much on the finances, do too much meddling here and too much meddling here. And we need board members to stop meddling. Management manages, and I'll go, you know, Celia always has to send an email when they would respond to this. Well, people learn, I'll go to Celia or I'll go to Cindy, or I will go to Brian and I'll cut the line. We just need to stop the cut line. This process is about let management manage and get the board to be a bunch of volunteers who have a board meeting or a workshop and stuff like that. It's totally unfair to say that the president is never going to talk to Lauren and never going to have to make a snap decision. I've been a president twice. That's an impossible statement to make, and you've been a president twice, you know that. Then the board president tells people, but the rule I had, and Kevin will remember this in spades, I would copy darn near everything on all the time. And people would love it, they'd hate it, but that was my communication style, and that's how I worked it. That is the purpose of the meeting.
Okay. So again, I agree with you in principle and in principle as well. I also was actually going to say the same thing because I sent it to you the other day about this is in the weeds, right? When we basically represent something that has already gone to management through the board to management. So we talked about that. I'm okay with putting some things in place. Okay, I'm okay with making some changes to adjust Jackson's style to make it easier on the people on the board that have friction with him. But there is no good reason that I've heard or seen to do something unprecedented unprecedented and remove him as president.
Have you heard call for action?
Brian, come on.
No, Jim, you're putting words in it.
No, I did not.
Please.
Jackson,
Let me.
I will.
Yeah, let me just speak.
I will get you.
I'm not hearing.
No. Let me kill. I will get you through the budget meeting on Thursday. My resignation as a board member will be effective at the end of the board meeting on Thursday. I'm not dealing with this shit in September, and my trust is gone. I'm sorry, I'm done.
I'd like to ask for a 10-minute, I'm going to call a 10-minute adjournment or recess. Come back in 10 minutes.
I will put mine in writing. My resignation.
I'm going to ask those of you in the audience to.
I don't want to judge.
Okay, we are back.
Yes.
Again, I'm going to ask the audience, since that's all being recorded. Back to recording. I think it's appropriate at this hour. Bill, you're going to join us?
Yep, sorry.
I think it's appropriate at this point for me to offer to this board my willingness to step away as president if that's what the board wants. Excuse me, did you have something you wanted to say?
I think that would have been more appropriate when we had the other person.
Well, it might have been, but he chose to leave. So
Well, I don't think you had indicated you were going to like that off.
the decision of the board to select its officers is a decision of the board. With all due respect, Mrs. Barr, that decision will be made by this board. If it is the desire of this board, as it's currently constituted at this moment, to ask me to step aside, I am prepared to do so. I would like to remain as president, and I am perfectly happy, willing to do the things that you are suggesting. I think they are constructive choices and decisions. Cindy, I'm sorry that you think that I'm not a good manager. Let me finish. I will do my best to be a more collaborative manager and to move at a pace that is more appropriate. But if there is not the confidence in me to do that, then I invite at this moment for a consensus of the board to tell me that that's what they wish to be done. So David, I'm going to turn it over to you at this point.
So to move that forward would require a motion and a second. In order to pass, it would need 4 votes, 4 out of 7, 4 out of 6, since we have 6 right now. If we were to move in that direction, I think the best thing to do would do an anonymous vote, meaning.
No, I'm going to object to an anonymous vote. I think this needs to be public. The board members need to.
My suggestion would be that it would be an anonymous vote if we were to move that direction. But first of all, let's see if there is a motion and a second to move that forward.
I will make that motion only because in an effort to get things, to do a reset and get things back on
Can we
track,
hold the discussion, just make a motion and then
Okay.
a second and see.
I will make a motion to accept Jackson's offer to step aside.
Do we have a second? According to Robert's rules, the motion dies for lack of a second.
I'll second it. Sorry, I didn't know that we had a time limit.
Well, it's not forever, but if you're seconding it, then we do have a motion. Can we discuss, Cindy, do you want to finish your comment?
What I was going to say was, and this is only because in our attempt to reset and get back on track, I think we've done irreparable damage this board and particularly to Jackson. And I don't think that he can, unfortunately, he's been damaged by this.
By our discussion today, just to be clear.
By some of the comments that were made and the,
Okay.
the flare-ups and things like that. I'm sorry, Jackson, the last thing I wanted to do was embarrass you or put you in this position.
That wasn't our intent. And it wasn't our intent to have Brian stand up and resign. But I'll be honest, I was going to be right behind him because you put our integrity on the line when you question us and our motives for doing anything. We have no motives.
I think you're talking to me?
Yes, we
Okay.
have no motives, Jim, behind any of this.
I was specifically talking to Brian when I said
Right.
that.
Can we
I wasn't
focus on
saying
the
to anyone
motion
else.
on the floor?
Okay.
Can we focus on the motion?
Okay.
Can we decide how we want to proceed with a public vote or a private vote. It will require 4 yes votes. The motion was to accept Jackson's offer to step down. Is that a fair statement? So we would require.
If you want to do an anonymous vote,
Any thoughts on how to proceed?
He's the king of the anonymous vote. So if you want to do it that way, I just think the public deserves the right to see how each person votes. But
We've always done it anonymously.
When we vote in officers, we've done that anonymously.
But that's not what we're doing.
Understand?
okay.
This is a precedent-setting action, which I'm extremely uncomfortable with, because that means that we can do this every month indefinitely, and future boards could do the same. And I think this needs a public viewing of who votes which way.
Okay.
I mean, I really believe that. If you believe so strongly this has to happen, then let the
Okay.
world know that.
Okay. Other thoughts about how to proceed?
I don't think, I'm fine with that. I don't
You're
think. it makes
fine
a
either way?
difference Because as soon as you, either way, if you do it secret or whatever, everybody will be able to tell who voted which way.
Okay.
So,
Jim, any thoughts? Public, private? No thoughts?
On this, I agree with everything that Bill said.
Okay.
Well said, Bill, thank you.
I mean, I suggested private to put that on the table, but it's really a voice of the board to decide. Jackson, you're okay with public? Any further discussion?
and I just want to say that in Jackson's comment, he said that he would abide by, the things that we've laid out and whatnot. But I've kind of lost confidence in him being able to do that. And Jackson, please, my heart is breaking. I didn't want it to get to this. And he can sit there and smirk at me, but I'm being sincere. I did not want this to happen. No. But sometimes you have to, bite the bullet and do things in the best interest of the community. And this may be, especially after what's happened today, the best thing to do for the community at this point in time. And I didn't mean to infer that you were I forgot what word you used, crappy manager. At this point in time, with everything that's going on, it's difficult. I think the staff was taking 2 steps forward and 3 steps back because there was so much going on. And I know you had the community's best interest at heart. And I know you're a good person. And you know how I know that? Because I know your daughter. And you couldn't raise.
Please don't bring my family into this.
No, it's a compliment.
I appreciate it. It's not necessary.
I think
And I appreciate it. I really do.
Jim,
I'm done.
Thank you.
Jim,
I don't think anyone wanted Brian to resign. It wasn't my intention. I probably will be blamed for it since it happened right after he was talking to me. But I respect Brian completely. And but when things are said and plans are made, they're said. And so I'm firm in what I heard, and I'm firm in what the intention was.
focusing on the motion on the floor. Celia,
Well, I'm focusing on what
let's
Jim
focus on
said.
the motion on the floor if we
I'm
can.
focusing on what Jim said in response to what plans were made and what things were said. We didn't make,
I wasn't part of the group, so I don't know that.
well, there was
Let's
no
focus on
plan.
the issue at hand, please.
There was no, but we're being accused of making
Let's
plans.
focus on the issue at hand. What I'd like to, Cindy, I think your point about damage being done to the community, actually, I view this as a very healthy and important conversation. And I would say, without breaking up, that Jackson and our community may be stronger for having had this conversation. So if I may, I'd like to call the vote.
Please.
Can I start? Bill, may I start with you? The vote was a yes means accept Jackson's resignation. A no means,
From the presidency,
I'm sorry, resignation, thank you,
please.
thank you, as president.
No.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's a yes, just to be clear. Celia,
Yes.
Jim,
No.
I'm a no,
I abstain, obviously.
obviously, thank you. So the motion fails. It needed 4 votes to pass. We did not get that. Jackson,
Thank you.
would you like,
Yeah.
would you like me to continue the discussion?
I'd like
Or
to
would you
make
like
one
to say
statement and then
something?
I'll ask you to
Thank
take
you.
over. The last thing that I would have wanted was for my friend Brian to resign, and I hope I can talk him out of it. I hope he hears this later. Brian has devoted an enormous amount to this community, as has every member of this board. I believe in the capacity of people to grow. I believe in the capacity of people to change. I have certainly made a lot of mistakes. I spent this last week watching a life end and realizing the priorities in life. And CROA is not, it is not the end all and be all. As my friend Kevin says, it's just a little HOA in Kissimmee. But we take our responsibilities seriously, and I will attempt for Cindy and Celia, who have voted to, one direction, I will attempt my very best to be a good steward and to evoke leadership that's steward leadership. I have taken notes as you've been speaking today, and I will review the tape as well. And I think I have very clear ideas of things where I have made mistakes, specifically in dealing with both of you, but with the whole board. And so all I can do is to say to you and to the community that I want only what's best for this community. And I want what's best for us as residents and for the staff and for management. And so I'm encouraged by the proposals that David has made. There are none of these proposals with which I would take exception, and my intention will be to vote for the entire package that you proposed. I will move us towards a more collaborative style of management, which I'm certainly capable of doing. And if I don't do that, we've established the precedent now, as Bill said, that you can call that vote anytime you want. So I suppose we've now created the possibility for every future president of this board that at any time that's a reality. And that's a big step that we've taken today. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, David.
I'd like to say something.
Go, Bill first.
I just wanted to add something to your list of 7, which is
Good. No, no.
number 8. I believe it was Celia's suggestion about the liaison reports. I think that's really important because I know I don't really know what the other committees are doing. And I'm doing stuff kind of off committee related to physical inspections and stuff, which I'm not really reporting on to everybody. I was keeping Brian and a few others, and Jackson into it because there's money involved. But I think it's worthwhile. But I think it should be a written report, not a verbal report. And we should all get it into the package in whatever time frame Lauren requires. And at the moment, I'll officially report on ARC, and I'll officially report on any of the physical things, inspections and stuff I can, with the limitation that a couple of those things are involved with potential litigation, which I will not put into a board package.
Sid.
So moving forward, we reset just now by having our vote. Jackson remains the president, and we move forward without holding any grudges against each other for the betterment of the community.
Right.
Do you agree with that, Jackson?
Yes, I do.
Because this isn't personal. This is,
I'm not taking.
no, I'm just saying, with anybody, this is about our community and our common denomination, which is the best interest of Celebration. So we're moving forward, and that's it.
So two other closure items on that. One is I'm going to ask Lauren if any of these give you, or if you want to think about if any of these give you heartburn, concern, or you know, let me do my other part. I will distribute these to everybody for wordsmithing, and I'll try something that Bill just said, and you can wordsmith whatever I propose to the group, and then Lauren, you can push back on some of these. So if there's any.
I
So we could
request to
put
put
this
this
as-
on the September 14th board meeting as a final vote, so there's
That makes
enough
sense.
time to discuss.
Is there agreement that September 14th we would put this on as an action item?
Or do we wait until the end of September? I will be missing September 14th.
Well, since we're talking about only one board meeting a month, it makes sense to put it on September 14th, because if we did that, then we would cancel the second board meeting and apply a workshop if we needed it, correct?
I will miss the 14th.
You'll miss the
I will
14th.
miss the 14th. I will be present the 28th.
What's your preference?
That's
My
a long time,
preference is
that's a
what-
long time to wait, but, you know.
We can circulate.
I'm out of state, but I was going to join remotely on the 14th, so I would be in person as well, if that's any.
If there's nothing urgent, can we defer? Is that okay?
Yes, fine with me.
And we can do a workshop in between if we need it, on some important issue.
So just, the other possibility is we have a budget workshop on Thursday. We could add this to that agenda, correct? Do
You
we want to do
could.
that? I mean, it's a 5-hour meeting.
It
so it's
depends
set up.
on how lengthy your discussion on this would be versus diving into the budget.
Well, let me ask, I mean, do you think this is a long discussion to have?
I don't, I could agree to them all right now. I mean,
I mean, I could.
there's nothing wrong with this.
Basically, there's agreement in principle,
It would be like a resolution or,
kind of. It's an internal document.
yeah, a new proposal moving forward on the role of the president and, correct?
Well, let me say this. In the absence of a motion to do something, I will take this as the desire of the board and I will affect it immediately without a vote. I mean, I'm not opposed to any of this. So I will begin to implement this and then ask for ratification at a later date.
We're all
That's
here,
good. Why
which
don't we
is
do that?
perfect.
Let's do that on September 28th.
Okay. Now, I will not be, my wife has just texted me to remind me that I will not be here on the 28th. I'll attempt to call in. Yeah. So there you go. But I have no problem, unless there's something on this list that someone objects to, I will do all 8 of these items, starting immediately. We'll work on scheduling board meetings and workshops. Those 2 are just a scheduling item. And then I will ask David to join me as the vice president in the meetings with Lauren. We currently have those meetings on Mondays and we'll continue to do that. And then David and I will draft a letter to the board of those items. We will copy all emails to the board as a whole. We will ask board members to email management when they're the one voice. And if they are not, we'll ask them again to direct those through the president for just routing purposes. Resident communication will be covered with the entire board. I will refrain from making a president's overview at the board meetings, and I will leave that role to management. And I promise, pinky swear, I won't make any more videos. And then we'll ask all the liaisons to create reports on the meetings that they're attending. Did I miss anything?
No.
Oh, sure.
Would there be anything wrong with rotating the person that you bring along with you to the management meetings?
I'd be happy to do that.
I think that's fine.
I'd be happy to do
I mean,
that.
just so everybody gets a flavor for what's going
That's
on.
a good
and
idea.
what's talked about.
That's a great idea. It's a great idea. If I may just go back to, we had 2 agenda items. The other was to talk about these priorities, and just a brief comment, and then I'm going to suggest that we not talk about that today. The idea was to talk through all of these, but the intent here was that we get number B1 right. Focus on management day to day. As Brian said, we thought this transition, initially it was going to be 6 months and then 12 months. And There's still issues, with new phone system going in. We've had website issues, personnel turnover. And I think the other thing with personnel that I don't think either Brian or you said, virtually all the existing staff were offered a job or stayed, but then there's turnover once they got the lay of the land, and
22 new employees.
22 new, we had a lot of new employees. But let's get management day-to-day, the core responsibilities, the covenants, the ARC process, what we heard at the very beginning about hedges. I mean, those are core functions in our community. And then move, I mean, the budget is happening Thursday, 3:30 discussion. Getting that refined, that's our big budget workshop. It's in August, even though it's September, but it's an our August workshop. But then these others, and then to Bill's point earlier from 45 minutes ago about item 7, do we want to halt any of those, put them on ice, cool the jets, redirect? What do we want to do? Because I'll just speak for Lauren, and then you'll tell me you shouldn't speak for me. Is something like management can't do everything that's on those 7. We can't do it all at full throttle. We have to manage better.
Yeah, I mean, prioritization is going to be key in getting all of these things done. They can all get done. It's just, what do you want done first?
At the moment, my understanding is management's role is mostly getting, and I don't mean to make it sound like it's not important or hard, but getting contractors on board and supervising them and things like that. So we're expecting reports, a number of reports, advising us on some things which will better inform what we're doing. So is there more to it beyond that? Assuming that none of these projects are actually going to start this year for a variety of reasons, only because it's impossible timeline to start any project in that short a period.
No, you're correct. We're just in the information gathering stage, and that's, I think that's where the 2 evaluation groups are at this point as well.
So should we have this as an agenda item on the meeting in September to talk these through?
I think so, because certainly we'd started a committee to look at these things deeper. We should certainly have better information by then. Some of these reports are coming back. I mean, I've had a meeting today with somebody informally on some of the issues with this building. And so we're getting more information all the time, which would be useful in, any planning. But none of that's a commitment, it's just planning.
So this is an agenda item for the 28th or 20, whatever, in September.
14th.
28th.
I thought we just moved to the 14th.
Well, we have a meeting on the 14th, but your 8 topics up here that were proposed are on to be ratified on the 28th because David won't be here on the 14th.
I won't be here on the 14th.
And Jim won't be here on the 14th.
And Jim would only be remote.
And then,
Now,
and because of the nature of the in-depth conversation here, I would suggest putting these on the 28th meeting as well.
yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. Celia?
Moving forward, now that there's going to be a board of 6 again, what happens when there's a vote and there's a tie? Has to be 4.
Requires 4 to pass.
Well,
Well, let's ask Tom.
there's 6 of us.
Let's ask Tom.
There's 6 of us
no.
now remaining on the board.
All right, let's.
Okay, yeah.
Could we just ask Tom?
Yeah,
Okay,
you're the one.
right, no, but I'm not.
You're the expert.
So you have a 7-member board, you drop down to 6. A majority of those present in person at the meeting will decide. So if you have 6 in person voting and it's 3-3, then the motion doesn't carry. If 4 people participate, when I say in person, I also mean by video conference,
Right.
sorry. If 5 people participate, you still have a quorum because the quorum is 4. So 3 of the 5 who are participating
Right,
can vote in favor of something.
Right, but if it's a tie, there's no motion. It doesn't pass.
Right, the motion does not pass. Every motion will require
Right,
a
of
majority.
Majority of those
Yeah, I
present.
understand that. I'm asking if there's a tie and all 6 of us are present, like now.
Yes, then the motion does not pass.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
Hold on.
Other closing comments for today, and then I'll turn it back to you.
Just one more clarification thing. So Jackson's going to continue to be the liaison with the management staff. Is he now expected to communicate primarily / only with Lauren and let her carry any concerns upward? I mean, or is, because we've gotten emails where, you know, you've talked to several people above her pay grade, you know, some of the names I recognize, some of them I didn't, and that may be contributing to some of the 2 steps forward, 3 steps back.
Correspondence with the executive director.
Yeah, because I'm thinking if they needed our input, they would contact you.
I will say that most of the time when I have contact with upper management at Grand Manors, it's at the request of Lauren.
Okay.
But I'm glad to refrain from that if that feels uncomfortable to you.
Well, not
think
uncomfortable.
it's-
I think that may contribute to some of the confusion, you know, if,
Okay.
you know, too many people are
As
involved.
we're integrating a new management company into our community, I think our goal has been to have as much communication as possible. But if it's the view of the board that that is a poor choice, I will accept that and abide by that. I'm not unwilling to do that. So I think you all have to provide direction as to what you want in that.
We want to think about that and we discussed that on the 28th. But that's, thank you for that.
Yeah, I do.
We do have comments from the audience. So unless there are any other board comments, I'm going to ask for comments here.
I have an interesting meeting, guys. Eileen Barr, 1138 Mosaic Drive. I'm speaking as a member of the community, and quite honestly, I personally feel that the community voices has also been not encouraged, that we haven't had an opportunity to speak out about issues that are important. I look at those little eye surgery stuff, that's a good 7 items, and some of those I would really love to see in a workshop, such as how does the community feel about going forward with this building and whatever. I love the idea that you're going to bring back traditional workshops. I think it's very important. I think the other area is if you have an email, an idea, a suggestion, or whatever, where does it go? Who does it go to? Who are you allowed to speak to? I take it that we as a community are also not permitted to mail something directly to Lauren. We can only mail it to, I'm not sure who. And I really would like to see some guidance on that and some thought by the board about how can we get the community more real.
Thank you.
I will say, thank you. I will say the communications implementation group is working on all those things, and I'll ask management to get information out about where the emails should go. I think
Thank
it's
you,
a
Eileen.
legitimate concern. Tom, did you have a comment you want to make?
It's sitting too long. Tom Tuesday, 1104 Rosemary Way. This has literally been the toughest meeting I've ever been at for Crow since I moved here in 2002. This was tough. And, you know, one of the things it says, you know, we needed what's best for the community. I don't think this board understands that. I'm going to tell you that right now. And the reason I say that is I'm not talking about projects, collecting dues or whatever. It's really tough to sit here and see the interactions or lack of interactions among these board members. Okay, it's kind of like I have to go ahead and respect a certain level where I'm going to follow something. So the board has a lot of work to do with this community because I think you lost a lot today. I really did. I know Jackson has stated that, you know, now there's precedence. That was always in the charter. It was always in the charter. There's a lot of stuff that's already in the charter that can be used and not used. That wasn't the issue today. The issue was how everybody handled it, and it was not good. It really hurt this community. So I know you got a lot of projects up here, but for me, they're at the bottom of the list. Bottom of the list. We're a community. You've got to build a community. you can wipe out everything there because community, you're gonna have to build this in the next 6 months. You can go ahead and pass stuff, that's fine. But there's a lot of hurt that came from this. A lot of people are gonna be discussing this. And as you move forward, you're gonna have to look to how to build that, to have those honest discussions. It's okay to say we made mistakes. I'm just saying there has to be work to build that. That's all I can say.
Mike?
Yeah.
Mike Jackson, 413 Sycamore Street. Caught one caution, and I would echo a lot of what Tom said, but one caution, the list of items you're putting together, call it process, call it rules of the road, whatever it is you want to refer to them as. There's no magic in any of those items, and they're just processes. And until you commit to something other than processes, you are not going to be successful. And a number of you have heard my speech about style points and communicating and earning style points. It's like the diver that's going to go out the high dive and wants to hit the water. Everybody wants to hit the water, but they want to do it and get a good style point, right? Are you going to score a 5, a 6, a 9, or whatever? When you're getting ready to talk to each other and your interactions, you have to want to score style points. It's not so much what you're saying, it's how you're saying it. It's how you're saying it. And when you're in a leadership role, you can do a lot of things very technically when you're down at this level. When you get into a leadership role in the community, you've got to think about what you're saying and how it reflects on the community. And you want to have something that's motivating, that's engaging, that earns good style points. It's not hard, but you've got to keep it top of mind, and it's got to be conscious. And as a collective group, I don't give you a very high score for hitting the water. So you really, I would ask you with that image, reflect on that. Don't work so damn hard on these processes and we're going to do this and we're going to do that, whatever else. Just be good people and communicate and think about why you're communicating and what's at the best interest of the heart. Don't just ready, fire, fire, fire. Ready, aim, 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 then fire. That courtesy, that warmth, that empathy will make a lot of difference. It's absent here, you lost a most valuable board member. I'm not sure I want to be in the finance committee with Brian gone. I don't want to fall on my shoulders. I've got plenty to do. So you got to have that empathy. That guy felt disenfranchised today. Disenfranchised. Those of you that felt you contributed to that, I would encourage you to reach out to him, apologize, whatever you have to say in your own way, and invite him back. Because he is an asset and has experience that is not rivaled by any of you on this board, quite frankly. And I'll call that out. I think that's damn important. Not preaching, remember that.
Thank you, Mike.
Debbie?
Debbie McDonald, 42 Irish Street. I think just to follow up with what Mike has said, all 7 of you are volunteers. You have committed so much time, so much heart into this process. This isn't the first time we've had board members resign. It probably won't be the last. But it's very unfortunate because I don't think any of you, with the role you're playing, should disrespect someone else's volunteering and give them so much time. There's a lot of heated issues. You're going to disagree about whether you want a certain thing or not. That's always going to happen. But I think the most important thing is you're representing the community. We have trust in you, and we appreciate what you've done. I'd also encourage each of you just to reach out to Brian, let him know what he means to you, and offer him or try to encourage him to come back. He's given 5 years, and that just really, I can say from a personal standpoint, it's not the way that should be done. Thank you all for today. I know it was hard, and I appreciate all of you.
Any other comments? All right, at this time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Celia.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned. Thank you all very much.